Game of Thrones. Many people feel dizzy just from watching the beginning. The intricate and complex storylines make it difficult for fans to keep up with this epic series. But if you separate each storyline and examine them individually, you can truly appreciate the genius of the whole show. A massive ancient structure called the Wall, which spans 10,000 meters, divides the warm south from the cold north. Those who guard the wall are known as the Night's Watch. The wall exists because there are creatures called wights that roam the icy lands and can turn any living being into a puppet-like zombie. On this day, 3 Night's Watch riders are out on a routine patrol. Will, one of the riders, notices a distant fire and cautiously approaches to investigate. What he sees in the pit terrifies him, limbs scattered everywhere. A little girl is nailed to a nearby tree. Panicked, Will finds his companions and suggests they leave. However, his companions believe it was the work of the wildlings beyond the wall and dismiss Will's claims of wights as mere legends. They decide to investigate the cause of the deaths and find the whereabouts of nearby wildlings. But when the 3 men return to the pit, the dismembered limbs are gone. The captain signals for Will to search further. Just as Will steps away, his companions are swiftly dispatched by the appearing wights. Before Will can react, the little girl who was previously nailed to the tree stands before him. Unable to escape, Will witnesses another teammate being beheaded, but instead of harming Will, the wights spare him to deliver a message to humanity. The castle closest to the wall is called Winterfell. Its lord is Eddard Stark, also known as Ned, who is known as the King in the North, guarding the 7 kingdoms below the wall. Since there have been no signs of wights for thousands of years, the Stark family's duties have been relatively light. Ned has 6 children, 4 of whom are his biological offspring: his youngest son Bran Stark, his second daughter Arya Stark, his eldest daughter Sansa Stark, and his eldest son Robb Stark. He also has a son named Jon Snow, who is his illegitimate child, and his adopted son Theon Greyjoy. The next day, Will, who managed to escape back to the south, is captured by the patrols of the north. Winterfell oversees the allocation of personnel for the wall, and according to the ancient traditions of the family, any Night's Watch member leaving the wall is considered desertion, punishable by beheading, with the king in the north himself having to carry out the execution. As Will is brought forward, he keeps repeating the word wights. But how can the others believe him when wights haven't been seen in 4,000 years? It is the first appearance of wights in 4,000 years, witnessed only by Will, who survived. Considering Will a deserter, and unable to convince everyone, Ned reluctantly executes him in front of all the men. On the way back to the castle, they discover a direwolf that has perished alongside a stag. Normally, direwolves, which belong to the low-temperature regions beyond the wall, would not be found in this area. However, the Stark family does not associate it with the existence of wights beyond the wall, which forces them to flee in all directions. Bran feels sympathy for the direwolf's orphan pups, knowing they won't survive without their mother. When the father, Ned, ordered the execution of the direwolf pups, Jon Snow pointed out that there were a total of 5 pups, coinciding with the number of Ned's children and the family sigil being a direwolf. This persuades Ned to allow Bran to adopt the orphaned wolves. As they are about to leave, Jon Snow discovers the smallest 6th pup. Theon mocks it as an unwanted child, saying, "It's yours." Back at home, Ned receives news of his foster father's death from his brother, who was the king of the 7 kingdoms, Robert Baratheon. He indulged in feasts and pleasures all day long, neglecting state affairs, while his foster father managed them for him. In the end, due to excessive exertion, he fell ill and passed away. Robert, recalling his responsible brother, decided to appoint Ned as the king's hand, despite Ned knowing that the position was a dangerous task that could not only offend people but also cost him his life. The king, whom he hadn't seen in 9 years, suddenly visited, bringing along his entire family, including the queen, his second brother who served as a general, and his highly intelligent but dwarf third brother from birth. Ned's entire family dared not be negligent and treated the king with utmost respect. Judging from Robert's military presence, even if he were to make demands in the future, Ned knew that refusing would be unwise. After a brief exchange of greetings, Robert indicated his desire to see a statue in the cellar. As they arrived in the underground chamber, Robert immediately brought up the topic of Ned becoming the hand of the king. Knowing it wouldn't be an easy appointment, Robert and Ned were both adopted by a father named Jon Arryn, who was the first to rebel against the then ruling king of the 7 kingdoms, Aerys II Targaryen. Known as the Mad King, Aerys II Targaryen was known for his cruel rule. After their family emerged victorious in the war, the eldest son, Robert, who had a quarter Targaryen blood from his grandmother Rhael Targaryen, who was the Mad King's aunt, married Cersei Lannister, the daughter of Tywin Lannister from the Westerlands, and was crowned as the king. Their father, Jon Arryn, was appointed as Hand of the King during Robert's reign, and he successfully healed the wounds caused by the war and maintained the proper functioning of the Seven Kingdoms. Meanwhile, Robert enjoyed hunting and revelry every day, living a carefree life. Ned, as the second son, couldn't bear to watch this and volunteered to guard the northern borders. Robert knew that appointing Ned as Hand of the King would not be straightforward. So, even before Ned could speak, Robert unilaterally decided the matter, using their children's marriage alliance as a reason. As they stood before a statue, Robert began to express his complaints about how he had loved a woman who should have been buried in the mountains. The statue turned out to be Ned's sister, Lyanna Stark. Robert had also been infatuated with her, but Lyanna fell in love with the Mad King. After the war, fueled by resentment, Robert impulsively killed her. Ned advised his brother to let go of the past and not hold grudges, especially since the Targaryen family, including the Mad King, had been wiped out. However, Robert knew that the Mad King's other two children, Daenerys Targaryen and her brother Viserys Targaryen, were still alive and in exile on the continent of Essos beyond the Seven Kingdoms. Their story would soon become a legendary tale of starting from scratch. With their distinctive Targaryen features of white hair and attractive features, Daenerys and Viserys were the epitome of the Targaryen bloodline. After their father, the Mad King, was defeated, the young Viserys and unborn Daenerys were sent across the sea to the continent of Essos, avoiding the pursuers and the informants of the usurper, the last remaining dragons of the Valyrian bloodline and the rightful heirs to the great dynasty. They endured sleeping in sewers and scavenging for food in the streets. The more they suffered, the stronger Viserys' desire for revenge grew. However, revenge required action, and Viserys lacked both dragons and an army. To find an army and reclaim the throne, he placed his hopes on his just-come-of-age sister, Daenerys. After revealing their Targaryen lineage, the local governor decided to aid the siblings and found them the most formidable warrior tribe in Essos, the Dothraki, led by Dothraki Khal. This tribe was known for their ferocity and prowess in battle. If a man of the tribe was defeated, he would shave his head as a sign of shame. However, as the leader, Khal had never been defeated, making him the one with the longest braid in the tribe. Yet he had never taken a wife. So, Viserys planned to offer Daenerys in exchange for Khal's army to help him reclaim the throne. After a meeting and observation, Khal and his people departed without saying a word. The governor knew that the marriage proposal was likely sealed. In truth, Daenerys was reluctant about the arrangement, but Viserys used both persuasion and coercion, claiming that the throne was more valuable than her body. Daenerys and Khal's wedding took place as planned. To add to the festive atmosphere, men could compete on the spot for the right to claim a spouse. The commander informed Viserys that in the eyes of others, the wedding would not be considered successful unless a few people died. Due to the great reputation of the Dothraki people, other tribes sent gifts and congratulations. However, the wide variety of gifts made Daenerys uneasy. Among them, one gift stood out: a knight who presented her with a history of the Seven Kingdoms, a knight from Bear Island named Jorah Mormont. In fact, the title of knight originated from the Mad King, and Jorah was one of them. He had previously served Daenerys' father. After the overthrow of the Mad King's rule, Jorah, driven by his vain and ambitious wife, sold poachers he captured to slavers to earn money. As a result, he was sentenced to death by King Robert. He fled and arrived here, expressing his willingness to once again serve the Targaryen family. Next came the commander's gift: a set of 3 dragon eggs from the eastern Shadowlands of Et. Although they were fossilized, they were beautiful and worth collecting. Finally, Khal's gift was a white horse, symbolizing the upcoming consummation of the marriage. In this way, Daenerys became the wife of the tribal leader, Khal, and was referred to as Khaleesi by her people, as the tribe constantly migrated. Daenerys, who had never experienced such hardships before, struggled to adapt. Combined with Khal's lack of communication skills and his savage ways of getting what he wanted, Daenerys found solace in her dragon egg fossils. To resolve the communication barrier between them, she asked her slave-experienced handmaiden, Doria, to teach her how to please Khal. Through personal learning, she eventually managed to win over this man. Over time, Daenerys gradually integrated into the tribe. Since they couldn't communicate verbally, she could only turn to Jorah to learn about the tribe's principles of survival. Witnessing exhausted slaves being whipped by her people, the compassionate Daenerys commanded everyone to rest on the spot. However, Viserys, who could feel his power slipping away, became increasingly irritable.
You give commands to me! To me! You do not command the dragon. I am Lord of the Seven Kingdoms. I don't take orders from savages or their sluts.
Seeing Daenerys commanding the tribe, Viserys, who was used to being superior, became dissatisfied. However, he failed to realize Daenerys' current position.
Rakaro asked if you want him dead, Khaleesi.
No!
In the end, Daenerys spared Viserys' life, as her innate kindness outweighed her animosity. At that moment, Viserys ordered Yora to kill them. However, Yora could immediately discern who was truly worth following. To facilitate better communication, Daenerys began to learn the language of the tribe. Meanwhile, her handmaiden noticed a change in her body and informed her that she was pregnant. From then on, the title of Khaleesi, the leader's wife, became even more firmly established. After a long journey, they finally arrived at the largest stronghold in the tribe, King's Landing. Viserys, however, kept emphasizing that it was he who traded his sister for the army, and the entire tribe should go and claim the throne instead of staying here. It turned out that Daenerys' handmaiden was also arranged by Viserys to spy on her every move, but Viserys discovered that the handmaiden had already betrayed him. Already burning with anger, Viserys confronted Daenerys directly. Upon seeing the tribal attire prepared for him by his sister, Viserys declared that he would never integrate into this group of wildlings and certainly not wear the repulsive braid. Daenerys responded by saying that he had no right to wear a braid. Viserys, who had never been challenged before, lost control in an instant. In desperation, Daenerys picked up a necklace and threw it at him. Viserys, shocked and unable to believe it, realized that his submissive sister had just struck him.
I'm a Khaleesi of the Dothraki. I am the wife of the great Khal and I carry his son inside me. The next time you raise a hand to me will be the last time you have hands.
It is wrong for a brother to strike his sister, but Daenerys felt deeply guilty for retaliating against her brother, who, in her mind, was the last male descendant of the dragon lineage. He could potentially be the prince that was promised or even the future king. Yora, however, stated that Daenerys' deceased older brother, Rhaegar, was the true heir of the last dragons. As for Viserys, he was nothing more than a shadow compared to a snake. Daenerys, however, did not wish for her second brother to sit upon the Iron Throne, which symbolized ultimate power. She knew that even if the Khal kept his promise to provide troops for their cause, Viserys lacked the capability to rule. The hope for returning home with the aid of her brother seemed increasingly unlikely. Daenerys began to place her hopes in the dragon eggs, intending to hatch the petrified eggs using a brazier's heat. As she reached into the fire, a handmaiden who entered hastily intervened, attempting to stop her. In the struggle to seize the dragon eggs, the handmaiden suffered burns from the intense heat, while Daenerys' hands remained unscathed. This made her question whether she, too, could be the prophesied the prince that was promised. As the due date of her child approached, the tribe held a grand ceremony involving the consumption of a wild horse's heart by the pregnant Khaleesi in one breath. The horse was considered the soul of every Dothraki, and they believed that consuming its heart would grant the child agility, fearlessness, and the same invincibility as the Khal, ensuring their progeny would be as brave and unstoppable. During the ritual, if one choked on the blood or found it unbearable and vomited the horse meat, it was seen as an ill omen, suggesting miscarriage, congenital diseases, deformities, or the birth of a daughter. Observing that she successfully completed the ritual without choking, Daenerys named her son Rhaegar. With the cheers of everyone, she finally solidified her position as the queen through bloodline succession. Viserys, realizing that the tide had turned against him, planned to steal the 3 dragon eggs and forge his own path. However, Yora, who was keenly observant, would not let him succeed. Viserys, seeing that nothing he said was working, had no choice but to abandon his thoughts and discard the dragon eggs. However, during the evening feast in the tribe, a drunken Viserys appeared with a sword, which was forbidden to be carried in King's Landing.
Come, get your hands off me! No one touches the dragon!
Observing his sister's growing influence within the tribe, Viserys sought out Daenerys at the feast. Fueled by alcohol, Yora gestured for Viserys to sit down, but Viserys insisted that a king should not sit in a corner. At this moment, Khal intervened, stating, "You are no king," instantly emboldening Viserys. He brandished his sword, finally pointing it at Daenerys' belly. using their unborn child as leverage, demanding that the Khal fulfill his past promises of providing an army and a crown. Otherwise, he would take his sister, Daenerys, away. As for the child, he claimed he could simply carve it out of Daenerys's belly. Expressionless, Khal assured Viserys that he would honor his promises and provide him with a gold crown that would astonish the world. When Viserys felt satisfied and slowly lowered his blade, Khal gave a command, and the people who rushed forward immediately broke Viserys' arm, the one holding the sword.
A crown for king.
He was no dragon. Fire cannot kill a dragon.
Ignoring the resistance from her followers, Daenerys ordered her tribesmen to bring Khal's horse. The witch declared that once the spell began, no one should disturb her. In this manner, the horse died before Khal's eyes, and a stubborn Daenerys walked out of the tent in a daze. At that moment, Khal's Khalasar guards insisted on stopping this forbidden blood magic. They pushed Daenerys aside and prepared to enter and interrupt the ritual. Jorah, loyal to Daenerys, drew his sword to intervene. Clad in armor, he swiftly killed the Khalasar guards in 2 rounds. At this point, the pushed Daenerys is in labor, but no one from the hated clan will help. In desperation, one of the guards suggested that the witch could assist with the childbirth. Reluctantly, Jorah carried Daenerys into the tent. When Daenerys woke up and inquired about the child, the witch revealed that the baby was born dead, covered in scales, blind in the eyes, with a pair of wings growing from its back. She also proclaimed that this was the price paid for a life in exchange for a life.